So Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, keep pushing something. He calls the two pizza team. It means that the team has to be fed with two pizzas. If your team is bigger than that, so it means your team is too large. So you have okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Auto Tech Show. Of course, our podcast that talks everything automotive technology and innovation. My name is Mark Babin, your host, and it's great to have you with me. So many people tuning into this episode, and it's a really good one. As you know from the title, today on this pod, we're looking at how you can effectively bring innovation into your company culture at the deepest levels to help foster creative thinking and empower your team to make great innovative steps forward. Now, to do this, I'm very honored to bring in all the way from Montreal, Canada, Dave Caissy. Dave's an expert on all things innovation and is the founder at Innovation Leaders Club, an elite club composed exclusively of senior executives in innovation leadership positions, of course, with their primary purpose be to share best practices and experience among these innovation leaders to propel it forward. Dave, I love the association, the organization's goal. It's fantastic work that they're doing. And it's great to have you on this episode to really bring this topic to the forefront. It's one that we keep hearing come up. So I'm really excited to have you on, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for having me today, and I'll try my best. I'm wearing two hats, so I'm the founder of the Innovation Leaders Club, so I'll try to do my best to represent the 2,500 club members that we have, and I do spend, I would say, almost every day having at least discussion, also attending sessions. So I've heard a lot of things about those innovators, but I'm also hands-on supporting these organizations to increase the innovation capacity. So I'll be juggling between the two, what I see and what I first experience on site. And I'm sure there's a lot of things interesting we're going to come up.
Absolutely. I know that you have your hands in a lot of different pots, as you mentioned. So I think bringing that experience to the listeners today is going to bring a lot of insight, and I'm really looking forward to it. So that said, let's jump straight in to, I think, one of the key things that I love to discuss, those key reasons for fostering a culture of innovation. We see that it's more important and more critical now than ever to really have this. So what are some of those key reasons that people should have it, especially when we look at the automotive industry, and why innovation as a culture is so important within it?
I'll start right away with survival. Because if you do not innovate, ultimately, if you do not evolve, if you do not get to something else, ultimately, your organization will die. Let's take, for instance, the dinosaur. They die not because they were not strong enough. It's just they were not able to evolve, and much smaller animal species went through some of the tough periods into the million years ago, but because they were capable of evolving. So we see it in large organizations, especially in the car industry. We see some that are not evolving fast enough because there's a lot of new challenger coming to the, and ultimately that may becomes an issue. I'll give an example with Encyclopedia Britannica, which was the leading encyclopedia for those that had to make research back, let's say, 15, 20 years ago. You were going to the library, and if you were having part of the text or content coming from this, you were sure that you were going to get good grade or for your homework. But now people don't even use that reference, which in fact was at one point the best reference. What happened to Britannica? It's just they couldn't evolve, and now the brand's still trying to do something, but ultimately they aren't the reference for when it comes to encyclopedia. The other reason why organizations want to innovate, it's they are looking for growth. So there are different types of organizations. There are those that want to make profits, and there are some that don't necessarily looking for profits, but they they have other key performance indicator. I'll take an hospital, for instance, which it's related to the government, but their key performance indicator is they want to serve more patients, they want to do more surgery. So they have different ways of measuring, but ultimately they want to grow. They want to grow capacity. But if I take in the car industry, most of the organization are there to make profit. Ultimately, you want to grow your organization. If you don't want to grow your organization, and if it's not yours, if it's yours, it's okay. But if you manage an organization for someone else, so there's someone else owner, and you don't want to grow, most of the time you're not going to keep your job. Mm-hmm. So innovation is an excellent way of growing. And from what I've seen in the past, organization of capable of when they are innovating to get half of their growth for innovation. I'll take an example, like a very fast-growing organization growing 10% a year. So 10% is very fast-growing. So absolutely. If I divide 72 by 10, it makes 7 means you double every 7. So it's the rule of 72. And but the rule of thumb of innovative organization, you can get half of your growth from the innovation. So 10% growth, so it means that you could get 5% growth through your innovation. So that's very important, knowing that the other 5% could be price increase and also a little bit of market increase. So you see the real organic growth, because price increase, you don't make more profit because you do end up having price increase from your supplier. So you do push your price and you get higher costs as well for making things. So you don't make at the end more money. But organic growth coming from innovation, that's really profitable. Talking about profitability, most of the innovation, when they're done right, they satisfy a need, a latent need, or resolve a problem. So in some cases, and if things are done right, people are willing to pay more for something that is innovative. So it means that if you replace something that had a low margin with something that really resolve a problem, you will end up making more margin. And the last but not the least, it's sustainability. And in the automotive industry, that is key, because transportation if you look in the issues that we have on this planet, it's one of the problem. I think we're looking like at 20% for some cases for the greenhouse gases that we have, and so innovation is to make sure that our species can live for a long time, but also we preserve the other species, and ultimately we'll have to change. And that change, I feel that it's operating quite rapidly right now in your industry.
Yeah, and we have to. I think, as you said, it's a survival basic need for them to adapt in that way. Do you feel like there's a lot of opportunity within a conservative industry? Like, we know automotive, just from what we hear and what we see, they're slow to adopt change. And whether that's because there's so many different elements, different pieces that have to talk to each other. But for a company that can truly bring innovation down to its cultural level, do you think there's an opportunity for them to make big leaps and bounds in the industry? Maybe they're a no-name and they become somebody rather quickly because they chose to be innovative?
Yeah, but in fact, that's what happened to Tesla, for instance. So, and right now, we see that the large car manufacturers are being slow at adopting. So what it does, it allows us, or it gives room for challenger to come and challenge these guys. Now I feel that they start moving, but and it's not because they aren't working hard. Like I do support organization that and a lot of them that have to handle current product lines, and also they have those huge, massive plans. And the thing is, the challenge when you're established, and it's what you have to support the current while you're making the new, and that's what is tough. While you new, but you just have to build the new. But just because sometimes financing is a real issue. But the thing is, you don't have anything in the past, so you start from scratch, and so that's why challenger. And right now, because some of the challenger are being successful, Then there's investors that are willing to invest into challengers. But when we look in the innovation into the automotive industry, it's a story of innovation.
Yeah.
So if you look back all the way back, let's say to Henry Ford, when he brought the Ford Model T, I think it was back in 1908 or something, and so it's more than 115 years. So that was a real innovation. The car by itself was not so innovative, but it's the way he was thinking a business was really innovative, because the way that at that time people were doing a business, it was that they were manufacturing their components, or at least a lot of them. They were assembling those cars and they were selling those cars. So what Henry Ford did, he said, you know what I'll do is I'll do assembly. Okay, so I'm going to get others to manufacture the components. I will assemble them, and then I'll get someone else to sell them. So what it means, those are the dealers. Okay, so you see so you have the supply chain of component, then you have assembler, and then you have dealers. And I said 1908, so 150 years ago. And if you look at the business model right now of those large car manufacturer, it looks like it's the same. Okay, so obviously when you get into, let's say, Tesla arrived with something to challenge. So first they really challenge the dealer, for instance. They said, we're going to sell direct. Because right now with the internet, there's no need necessarily to have a dealer that, in fact, when it's going to dealership, you don't necessarily control things. You leave a lot of profits on the table, and brick and mortars in some cases, maybe out of date, very costly approach. Challenge also the car design, coming up with things. And I haven't worked with Tesla myself, but I work with some components manufacturer of Tesla. So I see Tesla challenging them and also giving them freedom to do some of the things, to trial things, while the other car manufacturer are really top-down, very cutthroat approach, very difficult to. While Tesla, there's a lot of, okay, let's give it a trial. Let's work together to find solution. And so some of the club members are suppliers to Tesla, and they really feel that they can trial things. And ultimately, they ended up being successful. They have also a culture, Tesla, of sharing a patent, while the large car manufacturers tend to stick to their patent. So why they share patent? Because they want more and more people using the patent. So we produce more and more of those components. So we get economy of scales and reduce the car costs. So in order to get the Model 3 to a larger population, they had to reduce the cost, because ultimately, higher sales level comes with volume. So if you sell high-end Model S, you're not going to get that volume.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
That's what we experience.
That's a really nice example too. And I think that really leads nicely into the next topic I want to discuss. And that's, of course, those first fundamental steps when we look at a company that wants to bring innovation into their culture at the deep level, like we're speaking about. Is it that culture of, like, maybe doing a big culture shift is obviously a big move, and that's not something that happens overnight. Those first fundamental steps, you mentioned that not having a fear to try things and giving that opportunity to try things. Is that one of those fundamental steps, or what do you think those ones that people
I wouldn't say that's the fundamental one. This is a step. This is where you want to add up, but you got to make sure that you settle something. Okay. It's building innovative organization. It's like building or like a building itself. So you have to start with the foundation. You got to make sure that we get something strong. We know exactly where we want to go, and that's what we call in our clubs members. We call innovation strategy. Where do you want to go? So too many organizations are asking people for ideas, but they don't set where to go. So they get all kind of ideas, And ultimately, we have to say no to like 98% of them because it's not where I want to go. So if you ask people, okay, trial things, get ideas, and you don't tell where to go, ultimately it becomes a disappointment process because people do generate things where not necessarily where the organization wants to go. So that first thing first, it is to ensure we have a clear innovation strategy. So what are the objectives we're trying to achieve? So I was talking about like that growth coming from innovation, like 50%. That's a reasonable target for innovative organization. But what have we achieved in the past and what should we set in the future? And ultimately where we want to focus innovation, because what is key for an organization to be successful is to focus. Take an example for Apple. Everyone knows Apple, and one thing that is obvious when you get into an Apple store is they're really focused. They make phone, they make tablets, portable computers, desk computers. They have recently introduced the watch, and also they make an acquisition for earphones. But you see, they're really focused in what they're doing, and that's where they're doing good. So innovation is so challenging that if you do not focus, you're going to lose track, and you're going to disperse, and you will end up providing very low value. So knowing what the objective you want to achieve, then where you want to focus and build a program. So for every focus you want to get, okay, Tesla wanted to get into the mid-market. So they build a program called the Model 3, and a program means multiple projects going towards the same direction. So multiple things needed to be developed in order to get that model. And then you can start implementing things to get the infrastructure to make things happen. Invest into those infrastructure. If you're small, those small infrastructure maybe within your current building. If in some cases you have to build something new. Also, you have to hire resources, but ensure those resources that you hire, you will maintain them. But because if you do, it's like a bucket. If you put water in and there's a hole in the bottom, so there's an issue. So you got to make sure you hire people. And innovator may take a year or two to become effective in your organization. So you got to make sure you keep them. That's really key. And also, since in the automotive industry it's so costly to innovate, you got to make sure you innovate with the external ecosystem. You share risk with others, and also you use others' expertise that you will bring into. And finally, not the least, it's be patient. Sometimes they embark into innovation, but they want a result like right away. So you got to be patient. Innovation requires time, will always take longer than what you expect. And that's, I would say, the few steps you could take.
That last point, being patient, and I think that comes with the topic of setting realistic expectations. And I really like that, because I think a lot of people don't do that. They expect, okay, we're going to innovate, we're going to do it tomorrow, it's going to happen. But how does a company accept those expectations? Like, do they have to, you know what I mean? Like, it's that difficult thing for a company that wants to advance quickly and wants to innovate quickly. And maybe they're used to having results fairly quickly. But as you mentioned, innovation takes time and it takes patience. But how do top level executives and perhaps people within your club, how do they set expectations on what it will actually take?
Yeah, so that's a real issue, patience. This is why most of established organizations innovate through acquisition.
Okay.
So what they do is they acquire someone who has been working on something for 10, 15 years because they want it right away. This is one way of innovating. But from studies that have been done by McKinsey and some others, international consulting firms, and really interesting studies, it shows that it's much more costly to innovate externally. So their impatience, because they're willing to pay more. Where I was talking, it is organic innovation. It means that we're going to innovate ourselves. And the thing is, innovate through acquisition, it is riskier. First, because maybe you will not find. If you do find, maybe you will not come up to an agreement on the price. If you agree on the price, maybe you'll have issue with financing. Let's say financing pass, some government might stop some transaction. So then if transaction works, they have not been integrated into the organization yet. Some people may leave the organization. It happens often when there's a question. So you see, all those risks means that innovating organically, yes, there are some risks, but when you make it happen and when the balls is rolling, then you can make it repeatable. So that's what is really key into the what we need to really achieve, and this is what we call a culture change. Because if you make acquisition to innovate, you're not going to get that culture change.
How do they communicate that effectively throughout all levels of the organization? Because I think a lot of people within these companies, there's going to be resistance internally. People want to stay the status quo. Maybe they have reasons for it, but how do they communicate that effectively, that vision and that innovation strategy through all levels, so they can really build that strong foundation that you mentioned?
Yeah, like you mentioned, you talk about vision. So then first we got to build that vision. We have to build that compelling vision that people they want to work behind, and it's a really, really good tool to hire people, but also it's even more effective tool to keep people.
Absolutely.
Okay? Today the challenge is not to hire, it's to keep.
Yeah.
Okay. So building that compelling vision and share it internally, but share it externally, because we want to link with others that have a similar vision, or they want to embrace into that vision. So it's most of the time it's top down, but we involve people. So we involve people, but at one point we got to make a decision, because we could ended up with having 25 visions, and we could have different vision as well. So I'll come back to the Tesla Model 3. So we could have a vision for the mid-market. Okay. Well, we could have a different vision for the high end. We could have in the automotive industry, I could have a vision for a specific segment, okay, which let's say general public. But if I want to develop some specialized trucks or vehicle, or I might have a different vision. Okay, so there's no necessarily one vision. So I was talking about the area of focus earlier. So for, let's say I have 3 areas of focus. So I have the mid-market. I want to get some high-end in the consumer, and I want to get specialized transportation or automotive. Maybe I would have different vision for those. Okay, because ultimately the vision for mid-market consumer would be different from specialized automotive industry. So I got to make sure that anyway, people that are working in a specialized vehicle industry may not be the one working in the mid-market. Maybe different people,
sure,
different teams.
Okay, that makes sense then. Okay.
So yeah, and we gotta push it down.
Yeah.
And also we have to keep communicating. I keep telling innovation leaders, keep communicating your vision. And when people say, yeah, but you know what, your vision, you keep telling us all the time. You know what? Keep doing it. It means it starts to be implemented. So you have to post it on the wall. You have to have it. I keep telling innovation leaders, start with repeating your vision. So at one point, people will be tired of hearing that vision. Just go faster, but keep pushing it. Okay. And ultimately, if there are people that are not willing to move into that vision, then in some cases ended up you have to fire some people.
Yeah.
So most of the time when I see those shift, there are people resisting. At one point, you have to let go people.
Yeah, I think that's a mature move to make as well, because if as the company evolves, perhaps a certain team fit with where the company was at that one point, and as they evolve, if that fit isn't there anymore, you have to advance the company, and you can't be held back by that exactly. And that, I think that really bridges again to these obstacles, and that's something I think that any type of change, any type of innovation, which obviously involves a significant amount of change, especially when we're looking at changing the foundation, core, and vision of a company, there are going to be challenges from all your talks. And I'm curious what, of course, in your association and conversations that happen and the work you do, what are some of those common challenges that you hear people deal with, and how can we proactively prevent that?
There's all kind, and you have to keep in mind that innovating, it's a human thing. It's people that are innovating for people. So most of the issues that you will have are not so technical issues. You will have some human issues. And so one of the challenge, like I was talking about earlier, is people that are managing a current business. One of the challenges is how we sustain the current offering while we're developing something new. But ultimately, we have, especially in the automotive industry, there's some 90-degree shift or at least 45-degree shift. So it means that new will cannibalize the current. So and how do I manage my day when I have the two different there's no other way, I think, by having separate teams. Okay, so we have a team that's sustain the current, so we innovate through extension then, and there are people that are developing something that's going to be a challenger of the current. In fact, it's going to replace, especially for electrical car, because we really have to think differently. The fact that there's wheels and seats and I would say that's the only thing. Everything else we have to rethink differently, because we got to make lighter car, we got to make the way things are made, and also the possibility of what you could do with it. You have to so we have to remove the bias of being in a current offering, and so that's one of the challenge that we one of the things that the issues that I see a challenge is funding, because it's and most of organizations, especially in the developed countries, there's public money that are willing to invest into switching the automotive industry in a more sustainable way, and you should pull all the leverage and to use that money, because ultimately when you will start making those new product lines and you will make profits, the government will be there to tax you. Okay, so this is why I call sharing risk. So they are not giving you money. It's just that they're investing in order to get profit later on. So they're there in some cases to save or protect jobs, but also they're there for business, because ultimately they make business with organizations that are profitable. And I have a story which is quite interesting. It's Kodak. You may know Kodak. They have invented the invented is a big word, but I think I would say they put it mainstream how you can make photography back like more than 100 years ago. But one thing that they have invented, it's a business model that we call right now the razor business model, which in fact it's you sell like a component, not like a product, not that expensive, but the replacement part are higher margin. So now we see with Nespresso coffee machine, for instance, but that's what it's the razor and blade business model, but in fact was invented by Kodak, because if you were buying the Kodak, then you have to buy the film, then you had to give the film to someone who would develop to process your pictures. So you would buy chemicals and papers, and so they had that whole system. Okay, and you know, Kodak in 1978 they invented the digital picture. So they were the first in early 90s to come up with digital camera to sell public. Okay, I had one of them, and they had 1.2 megapixel. They had a docking station, and they had like a connector with pins to plug on a tower, and it was working fine. But the thing is, they were so into the business model of selling consumable, so they were not able to find ways. How can we make money by selling a camera? And then we don't necessarily make money afterward because everything is digital. So that's the issue, and they struggle with that, and ultimately, at the end of the day, people were looking at how can we make money, and people were focusing on selling consumable, and ultimately they ended up bankrupt. In fact, even though they invented one of the best innovation we had in the 20th century, digital picture, they were not able to make to transform the organization, and they really hit the wall and they went bankrupt. So that's amazing that some organization invented something that killed them.
Yeah, I think there's a few of those. If we look at that example, I mean, there's the whole Blockbuster saga we could speak about, right? There's all these that they invented the way we go about something. They had a business model, but they refused to innovate or they didn't see the capability. And yeah, you're right. They didn't survive, like you said in the very beginning.
I didn't bring the blockbuster because it's really North American thing, but obviously at one point they had 6,000 store when they noticed that Netflix was growing fast. And even at one point, Netflix was having some issue, and for I think it was $200 million, they could have bought Netflix, and they didn't because they had those mortgage with the brick and mortar, and ultimately they ended up hitting the wall as well, and they went bankrupt. And that's very sad because they invented the way of renting a movie like it's movie on demand. So you had to take your card though, but it wasn't demand. You wanted to see a movie, then you would drive, you would rent the DVD and come back, and but it wasn't demand on internet was not there at that time, but we're starting slowly because this is how Netflix came up with streaming. But streaming was low quality, and they didn't even have new films, and they were not producing at that time.
Not to the level they are now. And now we see that industry developing on its own with every major, Apple making and production, and Amazon and everyone sort of going into this space. So I really like that example of how, the Kodak example is great. That's something you'd read about in textbooks, right? In years to come. I love that. So if you're a leader, if you're in a position as an innovation leader within a company that's going through this innovation, there are these challenges, like you mentioned. How do they navigate that internally? How do they have the right conversations? How do they onboard the right people? Maybe they're bringing in new departments, having to open doors between departments that were so separate before. How do they navigate that in order to ensure that they don't turn into a Kodak type of situation?
That's really interesting. There's different ways. So like I was mentioning earlier, based on the ambition or the focus where you want to innovate, they create teams. So they in fact, they identify programs, innovation programs, and ultimately programs, like I mentioned earlier, it's multiple projects going toward the same direction, and they ultimately make small teams. So one of the bad habits with innovation, and we say, innovation, we have to build those multifunctional team, bring all people together. And at one point we get those huge team of people, and it's really hard to do things. You're trying to push your innovation forward. You have to convince a lot of people. And what is interesting with Amazon? So Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, keep pushing something. He calls the two pizza team. It means that the team has to be fed with two pizzas. If your team is bigger than that, so it means your team is too large. So you have so there's a debate how many people you can fit in US, because especially West Coast, they eat a lot of pizza. You come from the West Coast,
that's two
so
people.
You know what it is. And but it's between 5 to 8 people. So what it means, it's define the ambition you want to go. Let's say the Model 3 for Tesla. Define the different components that needs to be done, and get smaller teams working in the agile way, everyone having his own objective, and then you manage the interaction of those teams. You're not having that 150 people team. That's not a team. Okay, so we got to make things smaller, because ultimately we're effective when we are smaller groups. This is why, if you look back in the Army, this is something that I've understood for a long time. So they said, like, at the section level, no more than 10 people. So, and that's the move in section. Then they get into platoon, they get into a company, then they get into, but ultimately it's the section that moves on the field. So that's the same in organization. You got to make sure that you stay small. People really feel that they belong into something. It's like if you want to be in a very large canoe. Let's say if you're a very large canoe, there's like 20 people that fits into the canoe, and then you row. And let's say if you stop rowing, you'll see the canoe keep moving. So you say you don't feel that you're rowing. So you ended up doing is you ended up doing less effort, because you do not see the impact of what you're doing. Yeah. So it's the same when you're a large team. Like some people tend to lose motivation because they don't see the impact. When you're part of a smaller team, then you're motivated. So that's one of the things that we're trying to get a bold, ambitious at top level. We really set the program where I want to go, but ultimately we break it down into smaller teams working towards the same direction, and then we manage interaction, and we manage also issues, because innovation means getting into a lot of issues. That's the thing about innovation. In some cases, we have never done it, or maybe someone else has never done it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, someone else might have done it somewhere, not in our industry, not in our country, not in or not in our company. But it means there is something new, and when it's new, it comes with uncertainties. Uncertainties comes issues.
I really like this. It's such a realization what you said with the small teams aspect, because it makes sense. Like when you think about it, it really makes sense. You can manage teams interactions, but the teams stay agile. I really like that you mentioned that. On that last point that you brought up, taking inspiration from other industries, I have to ask, is that a fair thing to do? You think if you're in an industry that is slow to progress, like automotive typically, is it fair for companies within this industry, the different niches of the industry, the different sectors, to take inspiration from what perhaps like the retail industry is doing, or healthcare, whatever the other industry may be, to take inspiration and bring that into your team and develop your innovation based off of that? Do you see that a lot?
Definitely. This is why the Innovation Leaders Club is a multifunctional club.
Okay.
A lot of innovation groups are very sectorial. So you have people in the automotive car industry, for instance. You have people that are in the med tech. There's people there. And so, okay, it's interesting. You feel that you're sharing some of the thing with others in your field, but ultimately you don't necessarily learn that much. If you really want to learn, you have to sit with people in industries, and there's always industries that are ahead of you. Back in like 30 years ago, it used to be the aerospace, the space industry, the military that used to bring all kind of innovation based on technology. But now we see more and more in the consumable product that bring all those technologies, and it's the opposite. Now we see the aerospace industry listening or looking at what the consumer industry is doing and learning from others. And the same for car. If you see those car, I'll give an example for the Tesla, because everyone knows Tesla, and they inspired themselves more into the tablet industry. And when they came up, let's say especially for Model 3 with that big tablet, people say, yeah, it's not a dashboard. It is a large tablet in the car. So you see that they inspired themselves where on other industries, and people felt comfortable because they knew what it is. Yeah. And those are the things that this is why in the club we keep promoting this. But also we use that to convince. Okay. Members they're trying to convince their CEO or general management, and there's no better person to convince another managing director or a president than another president. So when they visit another organization, they hear it from another president, that it's really convincing to them. They say, okay, he or she in the same seat as am I, they have done it, I can do it. Yeah, that's very powerful.
Yeah, that credibility sort of goes up a level when you hear it from someone who's in your realm of work. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it should be. I think, and that's what I love about what your group does, is it promotes that, and I think there needs to be more of that type of promotion of different industries coming together to learn from one another, because automotive can only learn so much within automotive, right? Retail can only learn so much within the retail, but there's a lot happening in the world in different areas, and I think the beauty of what your association brings together. And I think that's what will progress innovation forward, and this cultural aspect to really bring it in deep into the aspect of what companies are building, and that foundation, again, as you mentioned earlier on. So I think it's a really great initiative. And what you're saying brings completely true for everything I've experienced, for people we speak to, customers, and so on. So I really like it. And I think it's a fantastic way to sort of round out this episode, is to not be afraid to take risks, take those trials, take inspiration, but be agile with those small teams. Like you said, I think that's super vital. Good. Then Dave, I don't have any more room for notes on my paper. It's full. I'm completely taken back. This is an amazing conversation. Your insights are super valuable, and I know our listeners are going to love it. Before we wrap things up here, any final notes from your side?
I would say two things. First, be careful how people are being evaluated. Like I mentioned, the Kodak. The issue with Kodak is people were evaluated on sales they were bringing at the end of the month, and it was easier to sell consumable as it was to sell digital. Mm-hmm. And so this is why we see some people, let's say salesperson that work for innovation. Sometimes we have a fixed salary instead of having a salary depends of the objective you have achieved at the end of the week or at the end of the month. So be careful how people are evaluated. That might be a reason why they are not promoting innovation, because ultimately, rarely you have people against innovation.
Yeah.
So there are few, but they're rare. Most of people are for innovation, but at the end of the day, they have an objective they need to achieve, and maybe some innovation might be a threat to that objective. Yeah. And last not the least, if your listeners want to learn more, we have our podcast on Innovation Leaders Club. But even better, it's to go on our YouTube channel, because we have a lot of visuals extracting from things that innovation leaders have discussed, and we interact with the watchers and listeners, and it's really an interesting journey that we have started recently, but it's growing fast.
Yeah, I would absolutely second that. I've binged the YouTube. It's fantastic videos, and it really gives a good perspective and motivates you. I think you watch some of these videos and you go, you know what, I can do that. I want to do that. And so I really like that aspect of them.
Those are extract from our academy. So those, we have an academy that takes what the more savvy innovation leaders are doing, and we're trying to build that knowledge to push it to the other leader. So it's the way of sharing information among leader, and there are some extract on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're really great and definitely worth a listen. We'll make sure all those links are in the podcast notes below. Dave, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate these insights, and wish you the best for the rest of the year.
You too. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And for everyone else watching and listening, thank you so much for being with us on this journey and on this episode. As I mentioned, I've got tons of notes. I'm sure you do as well, but we really value your being here and listening to this episode. And again, a big thank you to Dave for joining us and giving us all these fantastic insights on how you can better integrate innovation to the deepest parts of your company culture. We see it's going to be about survival and sustainability, moving your company forward and progressing. If you have any questions about what you heard on this episode, as always, please feel free to comment below. We love to hear your comments. You can also reach out to myself or Dave. Our LinkedIn links are just below in the podcast notes, so please feel free to go ahead and start conversations with us. You inspire future episodes, and we love to have those conversations, so please feel free to do that. And of course, as I mentioned, links below as well for Dave's assets and that YouTube, and as well as the podcast. So you can go check those out, listen, and continue to learn on this innovation journey. With that, we'll bring this episode of the Auto Tech Show to a close, wishing you all a fantastic day wherever in the world you may be, and we'll see you on the next episode very soon. Bye for now. And we're out.